My apologies, I forget. When I'm ready, I just get going. Okay, thank you. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. Today is Tuesday, August 24th. This is the Litchfield Elementary School District Governing Board. Today we are convening a public hearing. And first we will have a presentation on the instructional time model remote learning. And Mrs. Gina DeCoste is going to present to us this evening.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Gunning. We are here tonight to discuss, actually Wendy Qualls and I'm going to present and then we'll both be available for questions. I'll just wait till the presentation's up. Thank you. You can go to the next slide, please. And then the next one. So in the spring, the governor passed a bill providing flexibility for schools to do different types of instructional models. And some of the options that they provided or can be provided is 50% learning and direct instruction, and then you could do another 50 in remote instruction, project-based learning, mastery-based learning, or independent learning. So the option that we would like the board to consider that we're going to talk about tonight would be having the option for an instructional time model in remote learning, something different from our AOI, the Digital Learning Academy. They created that flexibility. So last year we did it, we were under an executive order and that was okay to do. But this year we would use the flexibility to offer remote learning at lots of different levels. It could just be for students who are on quarantine or isolation, for if there's an entire classroom quarantined or a school in an outbreak that's closed, or like when Palm Valley was closed with the air conditioning, we would still get funding for those students because we would have an online program or some online options for them to do during that time at home. So it's not just for the COVID reasons, it's for the other reasons, like, you know, a pipe burst at Scott Libby, we have the flood. There have been situations where we could direct students immediately online and have services to provide them. The components of our remote learning program would be for the instructional approach, teachers using managing through core content areas through a learning management system like Google Classroom that they're already using. And then we're exploring other self-paced programs that students could get on and have self-paced instruction, possibly with some guided instruction from teachers online, but it would be an outsourced program that we would use. And we're waiting to really pursue that pending governing board approval. So, and then the time, it would be the same schedule as if they were attending a brick and mortar. Their day schedule would stay the same and they would still receive instruction in math, language arts, science, social studies, and then special ed and ELL services would be available if needed. Attendance would be tracked in our Synergy system like we do now. If they attend the virtual instruction, they'll be counted as present, or if they complete the assignments. For example, if we were on a self-paced system, if they completed the assignments, or they went into the Google Classroom and completed the assignments that the teacher had assigned, then they would be counted as present. It aligns to our strategic plan, the pillar of student success, because it would allow students to continue to access curriculum and instruction when they cannot attend in-person learning. For finances and resources, it would allow the district to continue to receive 100% of funding in these situations. And the service pillar is that it provides options for parents and students. It's good for kids because it maximizes the learning opportunities when in-person learning is not an option only due to health and safety concerns. Students would be able to stay connected with their teachers and their classmates. We will purchase, there is some financial impact. We would purchase Screencastify for all teachers. We currently only have licenses for our Digital Learning Academy teachers, so it would be an additional $10,000. And then looking at purchasing a self-paced online program will be determined upon board approval. We're looking at several different options right now. And the nice thing about it is that we'll continue to receive 100% funding for students as long as we don't exceed the 50% learning time. So 50% of their total learning time has to be in person. So you couldn't just go remote online for the entire school year and still get funding. So it impacts pretty much everyone, our students, our staff, and all of our families. So basically the process is that we present it to the board tonight. There's an opportunity for public comment, and then we will come back on the 14th. If you guys have questions or clarifications that you would like us to present on the 14th, we would bring those back. And then we would see if you could recommend adoption of a remote learning instructional time model. And again, it's not something that you're going to, that if you adopt on the 14th goes into effect on the 15th. It's just there if we need it. So it's not something that we're going to implement right away, except if we get the self-paced learning model in place, then when students are in quarantine, they would have another option of more self-paced learning that they could do. So that says waiting for guidance from ADE, and they haven't officially come out and said, but unofficially we heard that when it's approved by the board, it's for the entire school year. So the lessons that when students at Palm Valley went home because of the air conditioning and they jumped on Google Classroom with their teachers, that then would count for them being in attendance, and we would get funding for that day. And then we would communicate with the stakeholders and submit our plan to the Arizona Department of Education. And if it's approved, we'll begin procuring that self-paced learning program. It's short and sweet, so I am open to questions.
Okay, I'll open the floor for everyone. I have one question just to get us started, and then I'll let anyone else jump in. Can you describe a little bit more what you mean about a self-paced program and how that differs from maybe what we did last year or what other school districts are doing? What does self-paced mean exactly, and who is sort of responsible for that child's learning? Is it at home, or is it the teacher still monitoring that?
It is at home, and there are different programs. There are programs that are totally self-paced without teacher feedback or options for teacher tutoring, which wouldn't be our preference. And then there are some where they teach all the content areas, and the kids are kind of working at their own pace, and it levels for them. So as they learn and achieve and answer things correctly, then they move through the curriculum for that grade level. But then some of them also have an option for an instant tutor question, or to schedule time to have questions asked and have time with a tutor online. So it's more like what some online schools use instead of what we do in DLA with the Google Classroom, where there's a lot of live instruction and teachers. It's another option for parents, and it really could even be used in conjunction with Google Classroom for parents that want more for their students. Do the Google Classroom, do the teacher's work, and then also log into the self-paced learning and move at that pace.
And because this is like a self-paced program that we would purchase, aside from what we're doing here, how do we align the curriculum with what kids are being taught in the classroom? Because I'm assuming that especially during quarantine and other times, this will be interchangeable, right? You might go to school for weeks, and then you might go to this program for a week or two if you're isolated or in quarantine, and then you'd come back. So how do you make sure that their curriculum, right, is kind of seamless with ours?
Sure, that's a great question, because what we're talking about doing is having one teacher at a grade level for the entire district that knows our curriculum map and our pace, and sets a 2-week window of that self-paced learning for those students that matches where we're at on our pacing guides.
Okay. And that just would happen on a consistent basis, since kids could be accessing this at any time, really throughout the year, right? I mean, we don't know when something like this could happen. So that would just be kind of ongoing.
Yes.
So that teacher would provide that information.
Yes.
Okay. I'll open up the floor for other questions. No?
I have a few. My first question, Mrs. DeCoste, is this a temporary change, retroactive to August, and then just for a certain period of time, or is this a permanent change that we can take advantage of at any point at time in the future? Or is it pretty much kind of just a COVID based till the pandemic is over?
It it would be a permanent change, and it would be, in our opinion, for use in emergencies only, but it would go into policy because there are different options that we could use. We just chose the remote learning one because we think it's most impactful. Wendy's got to come back.
So it would be retro, and it's 50% for this year. We would have to reapply next year, and it would only be up to 40%, and then it phases out. So it was just a COVID-related bill.
Okay, can you say that again, Wendy? Sorry.
So this current year, it would be 50%, up to 50% of the learning could be outside the brick and mortar. Next year, it would be up to 40%. And then it phases out unless they reapprove it, but currently that's the way it's set.
Okay, because it kind of addresses a concern I had in reading this initially, not knowing more about what you said and presented tonight, which is this something that we plan to implement on, for example, in-service days? Or do we plan to have more PD offerings or more time that teachers are doing planning or prep, and we're having kids do independent study during that time? So I hear you saying that is not something that we are going toward. Is that accurate?
I would say currently the law would not allow us after the 2 years to be counting those minutes towards their learning time. But I don't know about the program itself.
Do we plan to count those minutes? Obviously, we do plan to for quarantine and that sort of thing, but we're not planning to add any other time for that, correct? We're planning to keep as much face-to-face, in-person, in-classroom instruction as possible, and only utilizing this when that is not possible.
Exactly.
Okay, I just want to clarify that. Wendy, one more question probably for you. I don't feel 100% comfortable approving this. I know we're not actually approving it tonight, but even kind of continuing the discussion with not knowing an estimate, at least for this self-paced online learning. I mean, we see the dollar amount for the other piece of it, which is like 10,000, great. Can you give me a ballpark on what we're looking at for the self-paced learning based on our number of students?
I can give you the quotes range from $30,000 so far that we've received to $320,000.
Okay,
So
yeah, that's why I'm not comfortable, because that's a huge range, obviously.
that's the range.
But we'll continue to, we'll have another opportunity to get more solid numbers before we approve this.
Yes.
Okay,
And hope maybe even a specific program, if we get that far, that, we're trying to sit down and do the demo with the companies with each
Okay.
one, and we've only gotten through 2 so far. And that's the range, but we have a ballpark idea of what the other ones are, so.
okay, great, thank you.
I had one more question. So as we use this over the next, this year, I can see obviously that with quarantining and other reasons, and even air conditioning, I mean, there's going to be things that are coming up. I think this is a good option for that. What will this be utilized when there are still some kids in the classroom? Like you use the example, if an entire classroom has to be quarantined, that this would happen. Will this be available for individual students, or maybe there's only 2 or 3 in a classroom? Could you use it for a small number of kids so that no one falls behind versus waiting for, if the whole class has to go out?
Ideally, for a smaller number of students, that's what got us thinking about this model and how this model could benefit students who are just the few kids with the plan that we have for our teachers. When 3 to 5 students are out, you're sending work and you're using Google Classroom. So this could be another option for those 3 to 5 students that aren't in the class, for more learning for them to have during that time.
Okay, I understand. And I think my last question, you're talking about teachers, if we're using the self-paced program and there is sort of those teachers available, I just want to be really clear, like those are not Litchfield teachers. These are people that work for this company, whichever one we decide, and we're just working with them. As you said, the teacher per grade level would be working with that company to make sure that there is a seamless transition between our curriculum, but those teachers are not Litchfield teachers. They're not like the teacher in their classroom communicating online and in person. They're 2 separate people. I just want to make sure I understand.
So yes, with the one particular program, what we would ideally see is one of our teachers goes in to the 3rd grade curriculum for the next 2 weeks and sets it according to our mapping, our pacing guides.
Mhm.
And then when they're on, it is someone from that company that they're using that would pop up for tutoring or have tutoring hours outside the time they're in.
Utilizing our information in terms of where the kid should be by the time this end of this week or end of that week or whatever, based on that information.
Yes,
Okay.
or if a kid is struggling with a concept.
Mhm.
I have one more follow-up question. So I know one of the things as a board that we have been desiring is consistent instruction when the instruction has to be outside of the classroom. So can you verify that if we were to go to this self-paced software, that every teacher would be instructed to use this for every child who is out for quarantine? So all kids would be getting a similar type learning environment versus a packet or versus, I mean, I know you mentioned project-based and that sort of thing. Is that part of what will come along with this as well?
So you're asking if every student that goes out on quarantine would use this model?
Yeah, yes, I'm really asking, are we as a district going to tell our teachers or ask our teachers to use this if children are out on quarantine so that there is consistent learning when learning cannot be in person, face to face?
Yes, and initially, like to Danielle's point, it would be in the smaller groups because once they have like 20% of their classroom out, then they go into more live teaching and things like that, and more Google Classroom, and yes, so.
Okay. So this would help with our lack of consistency that maybe we've seen some in the past, due to no one's fault, just due to the fact that we didn't plan for this pandemic to go as long as maybe it has. But that would help. This program would help solve that problem. I think that's what I'm hearing you say.
It would, in some of the programs, the licenses are transferable. So if you have a student that's out on quarantine for 2 weeks, they can get in and log in and have their name and they're in the system. So it kind of keeps that 2-week data piece for them. But then another kid comes 2 weeks later, we can give that same license to another child to get in and do the same thing. And it holds all the data for us. In one of the programs, I know for sure.
Okay, great. And my very last question, I promise, is when do we anticipate this would actually go into effect? Like when could we start quarantine kids doing this?
It depends on the program, because if they're under contract, like if they're under like the Mojave contract with other school districts, we wouldn't have to go for an RFP. But if we really like a program, then we would have to do an RFP, and that could take some time. So maybe more answers for that. I'll jot down a couple of notes and then hopefully have answers for you next time.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, great
So,
questions.
no, I got a question. So what you just said right then, Gina, was if you use it Mojave that's already gone through whatever that sounded like a certification or something, then it means we could jump into it immediately.
We could purchase it
And
immediately.
but
I
it
guess.
implemented immediately after it was purchased. if it was purchased. Okay.
Yes.
And so what would be the downside of going that path? Would it be limit the curriculum to what, or in any way or not? Or mine?
Well, it's just kind of which program we think is better, but weighing all the options, and that certainly being an option too, is we want something that's able to go into effect when students are quarantined.
Okay, so that's a leading contender. Okay,
Yeah,
perfect. Thank
yeah.
you.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any other questions? Melissa?
No, you all asked all my questions already.
Oh, okay, good. I just wanted to make sure. All right, thank you very
Okay.
much, Gina. We appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
We did not have any public comments on the instructional time model. I believe that is still open to our second public hearing. So if you're interested in doing that, there is a link on our website that you can submit a public comment. I will entertain a motion to adjourn our public hearing.
I motion to adjourn the public hearing.
I will second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Our public hearing is adjourned. I hereby call our meeting to order. And first on the agenda, if you're following along, we are now on item 3A, discussion of our consent agenda items as presented. I will open the floor for questions or discussion or entertain a motion for the consent agenda.
I motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Okay, I will second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Consent agenda is approved. That takes us all the way down to item 5A on our action item. That is the governing board meeting protocol, use of video recording of governing board meetings. I believe I am presenting that, or at least opening that for conversation. So I don't remember the exact date. Excuse me, it was June 8th. I have it in my notes. The governing board met and decided that we were going to stop video recording and only have audio recording of our meetings for a period of time until the governing board came back together to decide. It has been requested by multiple board members to put this back on the agenda. So I will open a conversation for possible action to keep the video recording as it stands today, or possibly add the video recording back to our audio on YouTube for those at home to watch and not only listen. So I will open that for discussion. Melissa?
Yeah, so I think that we should go back to recording with video. I've gotten a lot of feedback from our community that it's really hard to follow the meetings just listening. They don't know who's talking, things like that. So I really think that in the idea of us wanting to be very transparent, that going back to video recordings is a good plan for us.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else want to chime in? No,
I
Jeremy?
guess ditto what Ms. Idema said. I mean, that's 100% the feedback. I think everybody wants it and should have it also. And there are other reasons that are very powerful why it should be documented. And
Okay, thank you, Jeremy. Does anyone feel differently or have any other suggestions of why we should not? Okay. I'm sorry.
I mean, I know originally one of the reasons that we stopped doing the video was for our personal safety. And I don't know that that particular issue has been fully resolved. So I personally would like to see additional time with that based on specifically what's happening in the Scottsdale Unified School District and their meeting that they're having tonight. I don't think that again, I don't think that's been resolved. So I would like to see us potentially delay this a little bit longer.
Delay the conversation to another meeting, just to be clear.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe table this a little bit longer, or, you know, if someone feels strongly enough to proceed, that's fine as well. I just would like to make that statement.
Okay.
I think that the security issue is, there are various sides to it, but I think it's the most important one is the security of everyone. And I think having video of our meeting is important for everyone rather than say for a single person.
Okay.
Can we hear Superintendent Gunning's thoughts on this, or if there's been any feedback from district administrators or otherwise?
Well, the feedback that we've received from an internal perspective is that they like not having the video and just having the audio, and that tends to bring the audience that is just really interested in the content. And so that's been the main feedback that I've received.
Can you define internal?
Employees.
Isn't the school district for the public in general out there and not isolated for the employees? I mean, there are hardly any employees here. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Just want to address, I mean, Melissa, I understand and agree with you that we have received feedback. I wouldn't say I've received a lot of feedback. I have received some feedback in terms of the video. I would agree, just personally, if you don't regularly attend board meetings and don't know who we are necessarily, it might be hard to differentiate who we are or who's speaking. Because we have had video in the past, we don't say our names or indicate who we are before we speak. We're just not in the cadence of doing that. So I understand that. I also agree with wanting full transparency, I will say that I'm not sure that there's anything that I do visually that changes what I would do from a voting perspective or anything like that. So I don't think that it gets in the way of transparency. I will say that because everything that I say and everything that I do, it can be heard on YouTube the same as if you're sitting here in the room or you're visually seeing me. So I don't have a transparency issue with us not being recorded. But the only feedback I have received is in favor of bringing the video back. I haven't received any not in favor personally. So I'm inclined to move in that direction only because the little feedback I have received has been in that direction. So I will entertain a motion or any other conversation or
I'd like to make a
Discussion.
motion that we resume the use of video recordings at governing board meetings.
I second that.
okay, thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? Nay. Okay, motion carries. Just to make that clear, obviously, we're not recording this session, so it will not be visually available on YouTube until our next regular board meeting, which will be the 14th of September, I believe is the next date. The regular governing board meeting, the second Tuesday of the month. All right, moving forward, item 6A, the discussion of change to the walk boundary, the first reading of revisions to policy EEAA, walkers and riders. And we have Mr. Nathan White from our transportation department. I'd also like to say a special welcome message. This is your first time presenting to us as our new director of transportation, so glad to meet you.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate that. Good evening to the members of the board, Superintendent Gunning. I would like to propose an extension of the district walk boundary due to circumstances of staff shortages in the driving positions, which has made it very, very difficult to deliver students on time. We're running behind, and it's more hours than we would like at this time. So that's what I'd like to propose. We are looking to address certain issues moving forward, but this is just a temporary thing. We would like to look at that, in the future. It's just a temporary thing until we get where we need to be. So I'd like to propose that.
May I ask a question? Do you know, and not exact numbers, approximate is fine, how many students this affects by increasing it from the 1 mile to the 2 miles? Or potentially how many routes or, however you look at that organizationally?
It will probably affect maybe 7 or 8 routes.
I'm sorry, say that again?
7 or 8 routes
Okay,
at various school campuses. It's just for efficiency purposes. I don't consider having students turning up to school 35, 40 minutes late is acceptable. For tuition time, it's just not working at this time. And I think that's something that really needs to be addressed in earnest.
okay. One more question, and then I'll open the floor to anyone else. Because we're amending a policy, at least temporarily, we will discuss it today and kind of gather some feedback, and then we'll be back on September 14th. If we choose to approve it at that time, would it go into effect immediately at that time? So there will be some time for parents to make some arrangements, or, for those kids that will no longer have bus service, there'll be a sort of operational plan to let those parents know that their kids will no longer have bus service.
Yes, indeed. And I thank you.
I'll open the floor for conversation.
So last time we had to do this last year, I'm still not a fan of this, but we allowed people to let us know if they might still need bus services if they were within that 1 to 2 miles, and we tried to accommodate students as best as possible. Is this something we're looking to do again, or that's not going to be an option this time?
It is an option. It would just involve us looking at the bus stops, because we do have a lot of bus stops. You'd condense a bus stop and take some bus stops away. So you could still have that service, but you wouldn't have as many bus stops, and that would create efficiency of running time. So if you have maybe 15 bus stops on a route, if you took it down to maybe 8, you could easily knock off 10 minutes off a route time. And if you do that on multiple routes, you're freeing up, you're taking away that late running time. It's being more efficient, and you're definitely going to get to school on time.
So if I'm understanding that, I don't quite understand the 1 mile and the 2 mile limit, but actually what you're just saying right now is that the biggest effect, you're gonna reduce the number of bus stops, which means that maybe pretty much theoretically the same students could be accommodated. They would just have to walk further to a bus stop, or am I misunderstanding?
Yeah, that is correct. But some of the bus stops we have at the moment, they're very, very close. They're not right feasible, if you see
Right.
what I mean. If you had less bus stops, you could walk to those bus stops and still get transported to school.
Understand. So in
Yeah.
other words, it's less convenient, but you're still providing pretty much the
Correct.
same bus service.
Yes,
Just
correct.
doesn't come to your front door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're looking at all options, and from my experience in that field, when we have situations like this, you would kind of condense your bus stops and have less instead of more, because if you consider when you turn up at a bus stop, it could take you a minute or 2 minutes just to load students, and if
Correct.
you have 10 or 15 of them, that's a whole bus running time,
Right.
for one route to one school. So if you split them in half, you're cutting the time in half, and you're making that service more efficient.
So it sounds to me like it's based on the fact that you've got finite resources. This is the best choice that there is, given the resources and the
Yes,
circumstances that you have.
correct, sir. Yes,
Okay.
considering the circumstances at hand. Yes,
Thank you.
thank you.
Anyone else, comments or questions?
I do have a question. Currently, how many openings do you have for student transporters and aides on the buses?
18 drivers
Okay.
and 8 aides. And that is including, where the student transporters are concerned, that's included myself and the office staff, because before I came here, I'd already just done a route. I just got here as quick as I could. So yeah, it's 18 at present.
Okay. And have we seen any movement on that from some of the marketing that we've done to try to get more transporters? Have we had any luck lately hiring anyone?
We've had 3 interviews for transporters and 1 interview for an aide. But we're
Okay, so we don't really see a near end in sight for this issue.
Oh, no,
Okay,
no.
okay.
Yeah, and it's not only singular to our district. This
Okay.
is the whole state and nationwide.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you very much for the information. Just to reiterate, we will see this back again on the September 14th agenda, and we will proceed from there.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Also, just a small plug for our transportation system. If you know of anyone who would love to be a student transporter or a student aide, please contact our transportation department. We are in desperate need of loving adults who would like to transport our children. So thank you for helping us out. Moving on to our last item this evening, item 6B, and it's the discussion and first reading of revisions to our policies, policy advisory number 693 and 703, policy IC, school year and open enrollment. Mrs. DeCoste.
Okay, this ties, I'm doing IC, and that ties right back to what we were talking about earlier with being able to create a policy, of course, recommended by ASBA, where the governing board has the authority to improve instructional time models. And this is a first reading. It will come back again in September. So, are there questions?
I just have one question, sort of operational. I don't see the actual policy here for the instructional time minutes. I just see the transportation services. So is that correct? Or, I mean, we're doing the first read of both of them.
You don't see IC school year?
Yeah, okay. It looks to be just an operational issue on my end. We'll get it figured out. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I don't see it on mine, so. Oh.
I think I see it on mine.
This is clearly user error, ladies. Please continue.
Okay.
My apologies. Keep going.
No, I just wondered if you guys have any questions on this or.
Anyone? Questions, conversation? This is directly related to the presentation that we just.
But just for clarification, Ms. DeCoste, this is the verbiage that has been recommended by the Arizona School Boards Association, correct? We haven't made any changes to this.
Exactly.
So just the changes are the things in strikeout, correct?
So the things in strikeout are changes and the things that are underlined are additions.
I
So the
get it.
additions are relating to the House bill, just stating that will meet the required hours. And then it talks about the length of the school year in the second paragraph. And then the third one talks about the process for approving an instructional time model. Okay, there's
Okay.
no more questions. Wendy has one.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the governing board, and Superintendent Gunning. So House Bill 2898 created a statewide expectation or procedure for open enrollment. Many of these items we already follow, such as having the open enrollment process open all year and to place students as we have openings. A couple of modifications that we would need to make is that we would be required to post our capacity and the available open enrollment seats on our website and on each school's website, and it would need to be updated at least every 12 weeks. Another item that we would have to add is a wait list. So currently we evaluate 3 choices, that the parent has up to 3 choices. We evaluate those in a moment in time. And if space is not available at any of those schools, we deny the application. And then the parent would go back in and reapply again. We would, starting September 29th, be required to place them on a wait list and then have a lottery system or some type of equitable process to select students to fill seats as they become available.
I have a question in terms of the sort of the priorities. I know it's been a number of years since I've seen the actual form, and I know we see it every once in a while, but there is a section for priorities in terms of, sort of how we categorize the applications. Is there anything in here in the preferences that are suggested here that are in conflict to our priorities or that we would need to change?
So they're consistent with ours. So you give preference to your current residents and then the out of districts. We can also modify these or add to them.
Okay.
So you do give preference even here to current students or returning students. So we would continue that same process.
Okay. And what is the process to determine the equitable process, whether that's a lottery or whatever that is? What is that process and when does that need to be decided by? September 29th?
So it would need to be in place by September 29th.
Okay.
And I currently have questions into our attorney because we currently base it on the time that the application was submitted. I believe that could still work. I just want to get confirmation from her to make sure that would be consistent. Everyone would have the same opportunity to submit. So I believe it will be.
First come, first served
First
basis,
come.
basically.
Yes. And the question would be, how does that work? Do we continue to give them 3 choices or does it become 1 choice and they go to a wait list? So we're still talking with the attorney on the different options to figure out the final format. But
Anyone else have any questions or comments for Wendy?
So my understanding is kind of, this is just, it's not something that we really, LESD decided they wanted to do. This is more a reflection of adapting to a change that the legislature has made, or am I completely off?
Yes, so the legislature is the one that created these more specific guidelines for open enrollment. In the past, it was up to the school district and superintendent to determine what length of time the applications would be able to be submitted, the entire process. And so the state saw that inconsistency. And so they took this opportunity to just make very more detailed guidance on what your preference, your priorities could be in the process. So.
Thank you. That explains it.
Anyone else have any comments or questions? Just to confirm, this is the first read. We'll be able to gather feedback or submit any additional questions. This will come back on the September 14th agenda where we will have our second read and potential adoption.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.
Okay, just prior to adjournment, there's something that's not on our agenda that I just wanted to make some space for today. Dr. Armstead has requested to make an announcement to the group, so I just wanted to give her a moment. It's not on our agenda, but we will adjourn shortly. My apologies. Dr. Armstead?
Yesterday, I put in my official resignation from my school board position with the Litchfield Elementary School District. I started on the school board 5 months ago, and when I joined the school board, it was my intentions to take my advocacy work to a whole another level for students and their families. Within a month, I was faced with slander against my character and intentions. Within 2 or 3 months, I was sitting in a courtroom. Within 4 months, I was making an announcement at a board meeting, pleading for people to stand with me and support me rather than isolate me for the things that they know they wanted in this district. Now in month 5, I am leaving. I am not leaving because people are running me away, because of people scaring me, because of people putting me in a position of fear where I feel like I can't go on any longer, or because I have been asked. I am leaving because even when I'm trying to fight for what is righteous and what is uncomfortably true, I'm being treated as though I am trying to destroy the entity that is built with the intentions of serving the students. I was never here to serve, or I was never here to be served, and I wasn't here to serve adults. I was here to serve children. So after 5 months of constant, continuous situations, letting me know exactly what people really want to have happen here in this district and in this community, I can no longer be a part of this sinking ship. There is a reason why people of color exit environments after fighting wholeheartedly for certain amounts of time. And it's not because we don't want to fight anymore. It's not because we're tired. It's because it's finally time to move forward and let God put his hand into the situation. So I will not say thank you for the time that I served here or express any gratitude or appreciation, because for the 5 months that I've been here, I've been treated as though I am not an expert in the field, like I have no idea what I'm talking about. And it's sad that even a person who is invested into the field of education cannot come and help to improve education. My hope and prayer is that as I look back at this district in the future, I see a district that is having uncomfortable conversations, that is hiring and retaining people of color, not just for the color of their skin, but because of their expertise, but also recognizing that somebody who speaks conviction is not trying to spread condemnation. So officially on today, Tuesday, August 24, 2021, after only 5 months of service to this district, I, Dr. Tara Armstead, am stepping away by my choice and not by anything less that you hear in the media. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Armstead. I'll open the floor for other board members' reactions, but I will just say thank you for your service. I appreciate you. I appreciate your time that you spent with us and your service to this district, this community, and most importantly, our students. I hope that you feel your time was well spent here. I appreciate everything that you've done to get us to where we are today. And I will let anyone else comment before we adjourn. Okay. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn.
I will second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion